the red flags that are when you're consulting with organizations and you see that they're not really ready to move forward. Some of those biggest hindrances are what you're talking about, the short-term bias. You just brought that up. Other hindrances that, organizations may be listening and they're going, oh, wait a minute, we need to overcome that so that we can move forward.
Yeah, I think there are some common ones for sure, but from our perspective, and anytime I'm working with any kind of nonprofit or speaking to groups of fundraisers or whatnot, sometimes there's a bridge too far, right? And there are people who are, very laser focused in what they're doing. And my encouragement is try to take one very small step in the direction that would create change, right? In change management theory, we're not trying to get from A to Z, we're trying to get from A to B, right? And so if you're listening to this and you're saying, I don't know how we could get to that, let's try and, alter that budget. We're probably around budget time for a lot of organizations. Let's try to alter that budget so that we're not butting up against expenses and revenues, right? We can push those expenses down a little bit. Let's not do as much and make some difficult choices. I wouldn't sacrifice on staffing, but maybe there's some other ways to trim back on expenses so we have a little bit of float. That's just the simple thing, right? A lot of times with board and staff, it's this reticence to spend any money, and that's not just from an investment like financial portfolio model. It's just, do we even invest in a website? Do we invest in staffing? Do we invest in resources for fundraising? And those are really red flags for me because it indicates that the organization is not ready to take some of these other steps. They really need to focus on where they are right now and how to get to that point. And that's why it comes back to this idea of what's the life cycle of the organization. So this every life cycle, as Les talks about, and there's a quiz on my website we can add in the show notes so you can find out where you are. But like an early struggle, if you're a small nonprofit, you're just trying to make it by, then you're not ready for some of these other structures. You've got to get through early struggle. You've got to move through that into what Les calls fun. And once you get to fun, there are new red flags, and then you can get into whitewater and all of those other things. But there are particular red flags for each of those stages. And you can go further into treadmill or the big rut, and lots of organizations get into this side of the red flags where they're over processed and they're hampering innovation and growth in their organization life cycle. So it's not just the small new ones, it's even larger older ones that have their own red flags.
Wow, this has been a fascinating conversation. What's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, learn more, read more about what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, I try to be out there, and I have a pretty unique name, so it was easy to get a website. It's just myname.com, CherianKoshy.com, and our firm is endowmentpartners.com. So we cross post things as much as possible, so you can kind of identify what are the things that you're looking for. As you mentioned, I do workshops and webinars as well that are publicly out there, so those are opportunities as well.